Welcome to Why I Quit, a show that interviews people quitting their 9-to-5 jobs in search of something different. Listen to inspiring conversations where we dive deep into the stories of why people quit their jobs, what were the hardest parts, where are they now, and any advice for people following the same path. I am so excited to introduce Scott Skrivan as this week's guest. Listen as Scott discusses his journey of joining the Navy and why he eventually moved into the private sector to focus more on his quality of life, personal health, and relationships. Learn how he begins to travel the world in his new role with Lockheed Martin, which led to his fascination with tattoos. Get inspired listening to how his love of drawing translates into a tattoo apprenticeship, all while still working a full-time job, and how this eventually leads him to quitting to become a full-time tattoo artist. Hey Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man, no problem.
I wanted to go back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your experience with school and then heading into the Navy.
I went to college at a place called Southeast Missouri State University. Towards the end of my final year, I started to realize all of my friends were graduating. I looked around, I was like, man, I've got another year ahead of me, maybe a year and a half, I don't know. It was a pretty humbling experience, And then two of the guys that I lived with were enlisting in the Navy, but they were bringing home literature from the recruiting station each time. And the Navy, they put forward all their cool stuff, right? Like be a SEAL, be a rescue swimmer or something like that. And so, as a young man, you're thinking, all right, hell yeah, I can do something like that. Absolutely. Wrong. But, I looked at that and they were like, why don't you just come up and talk to the recruiter with us? Can't hurt. So to make a long story short, I meet with them. I take the ASVAB, which is kind of like the ACT for the military. It's across all branches. And so thought it over a little bit. And next time my dad visited me, I was like, Dad, I've made a decision. And he was like, that's it. You're coming home, aren't you? Okay. Your mother and I thought this might have happened. And I was like, no. I'm enlisting in the military. I rode out the rest of that semester and I left for the Navy.
Did you, before that point in college, ever think about the Navy or military, or was that never on the radar for you?
It was really never on the radar. And I had a pretty negative idea of service members as we grew up dealing with the war in Afghanistan and kind of the backside of Desert Storm and SHIELD and stuff like that, like our parents' age. There was a pretty negative connotation, centered around PTSD and, these poorly adjusted service members coming back home and having a real difficulty with landing jobs, adjusting back to society and things like that. I knew that the Navy had an emphasis on technical jobs because an aircraft carrier, you got to keep that thing afloat. That is a moving city. And so you have people that learn real life skills, underwater welding, for example. Those guys, crazy, but they do very well once they get out. My decision was, okay, this is going to set me up really nicely for when I get out. I'll have a couple of tools at my disposal, and I think I need to learn a little bit more about myself. I need to learn some discipline. 22-year-old running around in a fraternity, I could use a little bit of humbling, So the Navy was able to do all that for me.
And so as you get into the Navy, how did it compare to your expectations coming in?
I'd say different. I was absolutely not prepared for boot camp. You hear stories, you see movies and stuff like that, but that was just an absolutely wild experience. But I made it through and did pretty well. And I was fortunate enough to go on to some other schooling. I was dealing with extremely intelligent individuals surrounding me, code breakers, data analysts, systems engineers, and things like that. I was thinking I'd be surrounded by infantry. And it was not what I expected, but I did the schooling part for several months, and then that landed me here in Maryland.
As you are going through the schooling, what is the direction of the type of role or skill that's leading you down towards in the career path?
There are a lot of different types of intelligence jobs, and mine was cryptologic technician with an emphasis on collections, CTR. And we were kind of a Swiss Army knife of intelligence. We were able to learn a lot of different things, and they kind of just plugged us where they needed us to be. Some guys get attached to a ship. and they learned ship intelligence collection platforms. Other people like me learned code breaking. We had some opportunities to travel around the country and then eventually the world.
And at this point, do you see yourself having a whole career in the Navy, or are you thinking about other roles that this could lead to at this time?
At that point, I would say I felt very new. I felt like the Navy was just kind of taking me where I needed to go. The only things kind of like on my mind was doing well in my profession and not getting kicked out of the Navy. Those are like my two like number one goals, because when you are in A school or C school, which is what they're called for us, you are in this very enclosed ecosystem. Your meals are provided. There's a gym on base. In Florida, there was a bar on base. So like everything you need is kind of like right there so that you can focus on what you're there for.
And are you working 40, 60, 80-hour weeks? What is your day-to-day looking like?
When I was in the school system, it was you are in class for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then you have duties to the Navy outside of that, whether it's on a cleaning detail, guard detail, and so you don't have downtime.
Once you finish school and you kind of shift into like a specific role, how many years do you end up staying in that role and being with the Navy for?
Well, everybody's career trajectory is a little bit different. The government invests a lot of time and money into us as individuals, and so they want you to stay in that kind of pipeline. Typically, when you learn a skill set, you are there for the entirety of your enlistment or tour. For us Navy guys, it was a 4-year enlistment or tour.
When your tour was up, was that when you left the Navy from there and went into the private sector, or was there a time period that you extended?
With the final year in my sights, I knew I was done with the Navy. Everybody says they're going to be one and done, but I knew I was going to be one and done. I felt like I had kind of hit the ceiling. I had done a lot, met a lot of cool people, but I was like, okay, I'm getting out. And I was working on a watch floor at the time here in Maryland, and I had a buddy. He is a private defense contractor, if you will, that works on a government contract. And he was like, I know you're thinking about getting out. I'd love to set you up with an interview with Lockheed Martin. They are going to want you to stay in this shop. Basically, you leave on a Friday in uniform, and then you come back on a Monday in, a shirt. Same room, nothing changes, except you get paid a lot more money. In 2016, I was like, I'm out. And I started working for Lockheed Martin.
I know you're doing a similar role in a similar place, but are your weekly hours changing at all during this time, or is it pretty much the same standard as you were doing before?
They changed drastically. When I worked on the watch floor, we did shift work, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. You do that for 2 days, and then you're off 2 days. And then you're on for 3 days, long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you're off 2 days. And it kind of flip-flops like that, so that every other weekend you're off, which is kind of cool. It works for a lot of people, but it messes with your circadian rhythm. And so I was really excited to put that in the rearview mirror. And when I started working with Lockheed, it was a 9 to 5. Pick your own hours. Like, I really like to work the 6 to 2 range, and that worked for me because I didn't have to deal with all the traffic. I embraced that at first, I think, but then, as the years went on, that got kind of stale.
For you, being able to shift those hours in terms of like the different shifts, I know in the past you had worked night shifts before as well. Was that one of the big reasons for also switching over to the private sector? Like, if you had to prioritize, like, obviously money's one thing, but how important was that schedule change to you?
I think it was important because it fed into this larger idea of like taking care of myself better. My quality of life at that point, while enjoyable, it was really tough on myself, my relationship, my ability to maintain healthy friendships. My body was suffering, something that I deal with to this day, and so do all of my old coworkers. And so I think it was a major factor because the quality of life was just not there. And the military doesn't care. We did sleep studies for the military, and it just, nothing ever came of it. Ultimately, it all came down to mission first, mission focused,
Now you're starting the new role, you're working 6 to 2, kind of have a more set schedule. Are you enjoying the work at this point? Does it feel like just the job, or where's your mindset at this point?
It was excitement, I would say. While those other things we discussed with were good advantages, the main one is I got to start going some places. I got to go to Japan for a while, a couple times. I got to go to Thailand a couple of times. Those are life experiences that are formative. It was really a really good time, a great learning experience. That's how I started to get like really into tattoos. It was my first trip to Thailand. I'm sure we'll talk about some more of that later on. I mean, Lockheed started kind of like dangling the carrot. It was like, do good work and you get to go some places and you get to see some things.
You mentioned the tattoos in Thailand. At that point, what was your interest level in tattoos and that industry as a whole?
Well, like any good sailor, up to that point, I had a few tattoos. But after I joined the Navy is when it started popping off. I got my Navy rating badge on my chest. I started getting some home tattoos. When I was in Thailand, I got, a koi fish. I just got like loaded up on stuff because it was inexpensive. It was beautiful work. I got to get a traditional style, a Thai protection tattoo on my shoulder blade. Just an amazing experience. Challenging, like any tattoo you get will be.
For all of these tattoos, are you drawing these yourself? Are you getting these from other places? Is it a combination of both?
I think the first handful of tattoos that I got I wanted to be very meaningful for me. Obviously, the Navy gave me everything that I asked for, so it had a special place in my heart. I got the outline of my home state on my arm, the koi. The tattooer presented me with several options, and what was really cool is he would tell me a little bit. He was like, okay, there's reasons behind the koi fish. And he told me the legend of the koi fish and how it represents perseverance and luck and things like that. And so I got to choose its orientation. I got to choose its color scheme. I got to choose what elements went alongside it and behind it. I decided to go with a lotus. And I got some wind bars and some traditional Japanese finger waves. And so that was kind of my education, the entrance into my education of, okay, tattoos, they can be meaningful, they're important to you, but the tattoos themselves have meaning more. This whole background and history of tattooing was what really interested me.
Were you into drawing and sketching at this point?
Ever since I was little, the drawing pad was a safe place for me. I played sports, I played video games and everything like that, but it was like my escape. My oasis was sitting down in front of a pad of paper with a pencil and just drawing for hours. It would just, time would disappear. Started with drawing Dragon Ball Z characters, like I feel like a lot of people our age probably did. It evolved throughout the years and morphed and kind of reemerged in college a little bit. And even when I was in the Navy and after that, it was like just my tastes in art and consuming different types of media started to change. It was actually on the tail end of 2017 is when I started working on my sleeve.
Was there a specific moment when you kind of realized that you could use your drawing and start designing your own tattoos? Like, how did that come about for you?
And in high school, I remember specifically 2 hockey players would always like, hey man, why don't you draw that on me, draw that on my arm with a Sharpie. It's like, all right, yeah, sure, why not? And that kind of like snowballed a little bit in the hockey community. Never thought anything of it, right? But then as I was completing my sleeve, I was thinking, I really like this. I like the tattoo community. This seems like something I can do. I can learn to do this. I can support myself doing it. So I started asking like my tattooer a bunch of questions about it. I kind of got the lowdown on how to get into the industry from her.
How quickly was it from you started having these conversations till you got to a point where you're like, I think I can do this thing full time?
I think it happened pretty quick. I started having the conversation with my tattooer and she tells me, step 1, build a portfolio. Draw or paint some pictures that you are going to be able to present to a shop and say, are these good enough? Will any of you apprentice me? Will any of you take me under your wing? And so I think I worked on that for like 2 months. At this point, my girlfriend is like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? And at this point, I'm working like a very stable government job, like 6 figures. Everything's fine. We're going on vacations all the time. Things are good. So in the back of my girlfriend's mind, she's got to be like, "Are you going to mess this up?" Like, things are going really well for us right now. And so I did that for a couple of months. I got this portfolio to a point where I was pretty happy with it. And I was like, Kate, I think I'm going to pursue an apprenticeship with a tattoo parlor, hopefully one that's nearby. She's like, okay, what does that mean? And I was like, well, I would do it with the hope of eventually doing it full time. And she's like, okay, so she starts asking me, the time frame questions and money. We start having the conversation of, is it feasible? Does it make sense? It's a hard conversation to have, telling your girlfriend, fiance, I want to leave this job to become an artist. Like I'm a 30-year-old man with a military career in my back pocket. This is the move. This is my midlife crisis to change careers. But bless her heart, she was very supportive. I secretly think she was hoping it would just be a side hustle for a while. But I think it became apparent to her fairly quickly that I was passionate about it, and I was 110% in.
As you are starting to think about this more seriously, you're putting together your portfolio, you're still working a full time job. What is work like for you at this point? Are you struggling more with the day to day at work because you're becoming this much more passionate about the tattoo side? How is that balance as you are starting to have both of these coincide?
I think the balance was tough. When I'm at work, I was doing basically, I was doing, at this point, I land an apprenticeship with a spot very close to my house called Spellcraft Tattoo. And so I would work down at the fort from 6 to 2, come home, and then I would walk on down to the shop and I would be there from like 3 to 7 p.m. I did that for like 8 months. When I'm at work, your focus is on the mission, and because it has to be. You have to bring your A game every day. I mean, that wears on you at some point.
And so, as you are getting to the point when you think this can be a full time career, walk me through what the process was like of, actually talking to your boss and the process of quitting. Was that difficult for you, or was it easy because you were so ready to go?
There are different bosses that I had to kind of navigate, like tactically navigate the conversations with. I had my work supervisor. He knew I was going to be pursuing this, and he was really happy for me. And all his requirement was, give me a heads up so that I know that I can so I won't be blindsided by like needing to staff your position. I was like, okay, cool, sounds good. Then I had my government boss who was super cool about it. He was very excited, and he was just like sad to lose me, I think, as like a worker. So those two guys knew that this was happening. The actual employer is the one that I had not shared any of this with. And I knew that that was going to be a more challenging discussion because it was not I was not working for Lockheed Martin at that point anymore. I had since left them and moved to a much smaller company where every person counts. I knew that that was going to be a challenge. But when the day finally came, I knew it because it was at the point where I was no longer observing. I was no longer tattooing fake skin or silicone or anything like that. It was, I've got clients now. I'm taking walk-ins. I've got people that keep coming back to me. And it was not going to the shop for 4 hours to just watch or like relax or anything like that. It's, I'm going to work. So I need to be at absolute 100% level. As the bar started to shift, the balance changed. That's when I knew it was like, okay, it's safe to go now. Some point you do hold your breath. You don't have one foot on land anymore. You're in midair. But the conversation with my employer went well. It went better than I expected it to go. He was a bummer to lose me, he said, but he's excited for the next chapter. He did try to keep me, what can I do? What can I say? And I was like, honestly, this place was amazing to work. You were a fantastic boss, but it's just a quality of life that I am not passionate about what I'm doing anymore. And I need that to live. I need to have a better quality of life. it made it easy.
So as you're quitting, you're officially on your own. Where is your mindset of nervous versus excited?
At first, I was very excited. I was overconfident, absolutely. And then we had our meeting with our financial planner. So at this point, my wife, kind of like the final conversation we had before I quit, it was, I support you in this, but you need to carry your weight. You need to pay the bills. You need to, it's rent, it's insurance, it's keeping the roof over our head and food in our cat's dish. And so it's like, okay, deal. Absolutely. I'm in. And so one of the ways we did that is we met with our financial planner, and she definitely expected the phone call to be, we're having a kid, help us plan for it. And the conversation was, Scott's quitting his stable job to become a starving artist. And so it was a real big swerve, but it was very encouraging. It was such a positive conversation because we knew that we were going to have a plan. I had spent the last couple of years building up this really nice nest egg that I was blessed to have. I said to myself, I can do that. If I don't make a dime from tattooing for 2 years, nothing changes. Everything's good. We pay the mortgage. We still see our friends. We can still fly home to St. Louis for Christmas and Thanksgiving to see my family. Fortunately, our financial planner was able to calm us down a little bit about it and help us set up different types of accounts that would be short-term, medium, and long-term monies available to us, because we have always had the one singular goal in mind, and that was we want a vacation home. And when our income changes so drastically, we wanted to know how to posture ourselves to still make that an attainable goal. It was really good to hear that it's still possible, and we decided to set up benchmarks for myself of things that needed to happen and their priority. So the first priority was pay the bills. And so we did a budget for the past several months so that we could average something out. And we said, okay, to pay your bills, Scott, you need to make, we'll say, $1,900 a month after tax. This needs to be in the bank account so you can pay your bills. It's like, okay, cool. Priority one. Once we hit priority one, priority two is paying insurance. Priority three, stand up your own retirement, because I've got several retirement accounts from careers past, but I needed a Roth IRA basically, so we can still put one foot in front of the other when it comes to that long-term lake house goal. They're attainable. It was important that they be attainable, honest.
And so now, what does your schedule look like? How does it compare with your weekly hours you were doing at your last job?
It was the biggest adjustment. Now I'm waking up at like 8, and the shop is open from noon to 7, Tuesday through Saturday. In my mind, it's okay, great. I've got my mornings. I can get back in the gym again. I can be swimming my laps again. I wake up. I still make my wife coffee, have an easy breakfast, visit her a little bit before she hops online and goes to work. I go hit the gym, and then I'm back in time to pack a lunch and head on down to the shop. I'm spending 11:30 to 7 or so at the shop every day, making myself available for walk-ins, marketing myself through social media and the website. I'm learning to paint because the movements translate really nicely to tattooing. I'm figuring it out. I'm kind of in the deep water, and I'm trying to figure out how to swim, how to make the best use of my time. The hours are amazing.
What was your first tattoo that you did on someone, and what was that process like?
My first client was me. When my mentor finally said, okay, you're ready to pick up your machine and you're ready to put it on somebody's skin, I was like, okay, I'm my first volunteer. Let's do it. And so, like many tattooers before me, I tattooed my leg, and it was a dagger, and it didn't turn out too bad. The lines are pretty straight. I even attempted some shading. It hurt like you wouldn't believe, but I learned a lot from that. It's kind of like, when police officers are going through whatever training it is they do, and they have to get pepper sprayed so that they can understand what they're doing to others. That's how I felt. At this point, I am like well tattooed, but being on the other end of it was a really cool experience. So that was
What
my
was your
first
first tattoo on another person?
Naturally, it was one of my old military buddies. And I did a ghost face tattoo, which is like the villain from Scream. And it also turned out pretty good. At this point, I'm like, all right, I got this. Boy, was I wrong. But that's kind of what I did early on is I put out the call to all of my friends. It was come get your come get your tattoos. Like honestly, like they're going to be free because I'm an apprentice at this point. My mentor is not comfortable letting me loose to like strangers. And so I just had all my military buddies just coming through the door, getting whatever. Shark jaws on their feet, Batman villain icons, just whatever they wanted, as long as I was comfortable doing it.
What are you most excited for over the next year or two as you keep diving in and build up this this side of the business for yourself?
I think it's exciting embarking on like a journey where you are just learning every day, literally every day. It's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. I kind of suspected it's like, okay, you know, everybody just puts the lines in at the same length and you just design really cool stuff. That is absolutely not the case. It is so much more complex. A lot of people, it's not just like writing on paper. The paper doesn't scream. The paper doesn't bleed. You know, it doesn't move. The pen doesn't vibrate. And so I'm super excited to be in a learning status again. I mean, it's been a year now and I'm still trying to be humble and I'm trying to be polite and everything like that. And so I'm really excited about large scale pieces that I've got coming down the pipe. I'm really excited to meet other tattooers and learn about their backstory and kind of how they got involved and what they like to do. And artists are just a different demographic of people that I've really never met, man. And
it feels pretty rare for someone to go from military to intelligence and then all of a sudden as a tattoo artist. It's definitely an interesting road, and I think there's a lot of people out there who are in very like traditional jobs and they're maybe not passionate about their work anymore. Just with the process that you went through with that, is there any piece of advice you would give for someone in similar shoes?
I would say that the best piece of advice that was given to me, and it was very basic, but it means so much, is just have a plan. I was lucky enough to have people around me that supported me and were able to give me good advice that made me feel good about making the jump. But having the plan of small attainable goals that can mark your progress, whatever that may be, I would say that was the most grounding element to it, because for so long I didn't know if I was doing well or doing poorly. I just could not have been luckier with the shop that took me in, treating me like an adult, understanding my background, and somebody whose energy was as motivated as mine.
For anyone out there looking for a tattoo, what's the best way to find you and get in touch with you?
So you can come down and see us at Spellcraft Tattoo. It's on Boston Street in South Baltimore in the neighborhood of Canton. Online, we're at spellcrafttattoo.com, and my Instagram handle is SAS Tattoos.
Thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. We want to hear from you as we keep growing. Please reach out on whyiquit.co with any feedback or if you have any guests that you think would be a good fit. Subscribe on whyiquit.substack.com to get an update every Wednesday with the newest guest. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube to get notified with the latest episodes. Also, a special thanks to Chris Dole for the music. Check out his newest album, Here's to You. Thank you, and we will be back next week.